When should you import employee details into your payroll software? Well, when you have to add many employees and want to save time. In this video, I'm going to show you how to import a large number of employees and their details into Sage Business Cloud Payroll. Importing employee details doesn't just save you from manually typing endless rows of employee information, it also ensures accuracy and allows you to upload all your employee details in one seamless step, making your payroll setup faster and stress-free. Let's get started. In Sage Business Cloud Payroll, you've got to create a unique import template before bringing in any employee details. This template keeps things running smoothly, making sure your data fits Sage's setup perfectly. It helps avoid errors and keeps everything nice and clean for an easy import. Sage provides some flexibility, allowing you to choose which fields to include in the template. However, the template has limitations and may not cover all the data fields you might have used in a previous payroll system. Essentially, Sage says you can import what you need, but only within our standardized format and limitations. Let me show you exactly where to begin. Let's find the page where we'll set up our import template. From the home page, go to the top navigation menu. Click on More and then choose Data Take-On. You land right on the Import History page, which is the first of three tabs: Import History, Create Template, and Import Data. Click on the middle tab, Create Template, to get started. You'll see the question: which type of template would you like to create? Right below, select Employee Details. We'll use the employee financials in a future video, where I'll show you how to import salaries, deductions and taxes. Next, under the heading, select fields for employee details. You'll notice some mandatory fields are already included in the selected fields on the right: employee code, surname, date of birth, and date engaged, which means the date they started working, not the start of a workplace marriage. To add more fields, look to the left under the available fields. Simply click on the field name like title, and it will instantly move over to the selected fields column. This way you can easily build out a template with exactly the details you need. I'm going down the list, selecting personal details as I go: initials, first name, second name, and known as name for nicknames. Then there's ID number and passport number for employees working in the country on passports, along with passport country. There's also asylum seeker, which, if selected, brings in the asylum seeker permit number and refugee status. Next, I select the employee's physical address. Sage actually does the work for you here. When you click on any one of the address fields, it automatically pulls in all the related residential address fields in one go. Next up is the work address. And just like with the residential address, Sage has your back. Click on any one of the work address fields and it'll automatically pull over all the other work address details. No need to click through each one. After that, we've got the contact details: work number, cell number, even a fax number if you still have one, and an email address. Next, we've got the emergency contact details: the contact person and 2 phone numbers in case of an emergency. And once again, with one click, poof, they all move over to the template in one go. Next up is a job title, foreign tax number, SIC code, exclusion from skills development levy, legally retired status, and RP5 start date. These fields are added one by one, but when it comes to working hours per day, working days per week, and fixed salary, Sage saves you time by moving them all over in one click. As we scroll through all the selected fields, keep in mind it's a long list, especially since each field will become a column when the import template file is created in Excel. Normally you'd only select the fields you need. For example, if you don't employ refugees or asylum seekers, you can leave those out. I've selected everything here to make this video comprehensive, so you won't miss any important information. Once you're satisfied with your selections, go ahead and click Create File. This action generates the import template, which downloads as an Excel file to your PC. This template will serve as the framework where you'll enter all your employee data before uploading it into the system. You'll see a confirmation message that the import template was successfully created, along with some guidelines for entering employee data. For example, only natural persons can be imported, and validation checks are in place to ensure data integrity. If any issues come up, you'll need to correct them before proceeding. There's also a validation rules sheet in the template with detailed information about each field for the import. After downloading the import template, click OK to proceed. Go to your Downloads folder to locate it. When you open the file, you'll notice 3 worksheets at the bottom: Employees, Instructions, and Validation Rules. It's worth taking a look at the Instructions and Validation Rules sheets to understand the guidelines. Pay special attention to the lock symbol on the Employees worksheet. This lock is crucial because once data is added to the sheet, you will find it difficult to make changes. This can be a real challenge as importing data rarely goes perfectly on the first try, and it's common to need adjustments. Once the data is in, it's locked. Tip: to work around this, create a separate and protected copy of the import template. In this version, you can freely enter, adjust, and review all your data. Once everything is finalized, copy the completed data into the locked employees sheet in the original import template. On your screen, you'll see 2 Excel files side by side. The file on the left contains the raw employee details that needs to be transferred into the Sage Business Cloud Payroll import template on the right. The process is straightforward. Start with the first column in the template and work your way across to the right. For each column, select the data in the raw employee file, copy it and paste it into the corresponding column in the template. Begin with the employee code. Highlight this data in the raw file, copy it and paste it into the employee code column in the template. To stay organized and keep track of what's been copied over, let's mark the cells clearly. After pasting each column into the template, I'll highlight the completed information in yellow to show it's done. Next, I should select surname. However, I accidentally copied first name into the surname column by mistake. We'll come back later to correct this mismatch. Move on to the 3 date fields: date of birth, date engaged, and date terminated. Before copying, check the Instructions and Validation Rules tab in the Import template, which specify the required date format: year, month, day. Currently, the dates in the raw data use forward slashes instead of hyphens, so they need to be corrected first. To get them in the right format, I'm going to leave the original data intact and copy the date columns to a separate sheet to make adjustments. Convert the date of birth column to the correct year, month, and day format. Then paste it back into the import template. Next is the date engaged column. I'll copy the formatting from the date of birth cell and apply it to the date engaged cells to ensure they're in the correct format. Once that's set, we'll copy and paste the dates into the template. Then head back to the raw employee details file and mark the cells with a yellow background to indicate they've been copied over. Next, go to the title column in the raw data. Select and copy it. Then paste it into the title column in a template. Refer to the validation rules to confirm that the title format is correct. No numbers or special characters allowed. Head back to the raw data and copy the initials column into the template. Next, copy and paste all the employees' names. First name goes under its designated column, while second name and known as will be copied together and pasted under their respective columns in the template. After transferring these fields, highlight title, initials, first name, second name, and known as in the raw data with a yellow background to mark them as complete. In the raw data, locate and highlight the ID number column. Copy it and paste it into the ID number column in the template. Mark this column in the raw data with a yellow background to indicate it's complete. You'll notice there are no passport numbers in the raw data, so this is a field we could have skipped during the selection phase when creating the import template. Let's check the validation rules for the passport number field. According to the rules, this field can be left empty if a valid South African ID number is provided. The same goes for passport country. You can leave this field blank if a valid South African ID number is available. However, if the passport number field is filled in, you'll need to complete this field as well. With confirmation from the validation rules, leave both passport number and passport country columns empty in the template. Next up in the template is the asylum seeker column. According to the validation rule, this field has a drop-down selection and defaults to false if left blank. Since we have ID numbers for all employees, we can skip copying this field into the template. Under the asylum seeker permit number rule, this field must be filled in if the asylum seeker field is marked as true. Just like the asylum seeker field, the refugee field has a drop-down option that defaults to false if left blank. Since none of the employees are refugees, we'll leave this column blank and it will automatically set to false. For the physical or residential address fields, each part of the address is divided into separate columns in the template, such as unit number, complex name, street number, street name, suburb, and town. Each segment of the address needs to be copied individually. According to the validation rules, address fields can be left blank. However, if an address is entered, each entry must not exceed the specified character limit. The first column of the residential address is the unit number. Since there's no data in this field, let's mark it with a yellow background so it doesn't cause any confusion. Copy the complex name, street number, street name, suburb, city or town, and postal code into the template. For the country field, select South Africa from the drop-down list, as I'm doing here, and then copy it down for all employees since they all reside in South Africa. With the residential address done, let's move on to the work address. We'll follow a similar process to copy those details over to the template. This employer operates from a remote, rural location, so there are only a few address details available. But let's copy what we've got. There's no unit number, so we'll start with the work complex name. The next available field is the work street, which work just fine for a farm name. Then copy the work suburb into the district column, followed by the work city, postal code, and finally select country from the drop-down list and copy it down to the end of the list. With so many columns to manage, let's mark the completed fields in yellow. This way it's easy to see which ones are done and which still needs to be copied. Alright, let's move on to the employee's contact details. But let's check the rule book first. Here's the deal for all phone numbers. They can be left blank, but if you add a number, it needs to be between 9 and 15 characters, with no special characters or spaces. And very importantly, it has to start with a 0. Looking at our raw data, it's clear there are issues due to spaces in the phone numbers. Let's fix this by selecting the numbers and copying them over to our calculation worksheet. Using the find and replace function, we'll remove the spaces. But this creates another issue. Now the 0 at the beginning is missing. To fix this, we'll add a 0 by combining it with the number using the ampersand character. We have numbers that start with a 0, contain no spaces. With the number formatting now correct, the numbers are copied over to the work number field in the template. From the working sheet, let's return to the raw data for the cell number. We'll follow the exact same process. Select the cell numbers, copy them over to the calculation worksheet, and use the find and replace function to remove all the spaces. Then add a 0 to the front of each number by combining the 0 and the cell number using the ampersand character. Finally, copy the now perfectly formatted cell numbers into the template. Next, copy the employee email addresses. Just keep in mind the validation rule. The email address can be left blank, but if entered, it must be valid. The emergency contact details will be copied over, starting with the contact person's name. I'll follow the same process as before. Work in a separate worksheet to find and remove spaces in the number. Add a 0 at the beginning by combining two cells. And then copy and paste the cleaned number into the template. Finally, I'll highlight the contact details cells in yellow so it's clear we've dealt with them. This ensures everything stays organized and there's no confusion. Clarity is the name of the game. In the search bar at the top, let's search for job title. My raw data is quite large, so this will help me find it quickly. Once located, copy and paste it into the template. Then highlight it in yellow to mark it as complete. Next, move on to the income tax numbers and copy them over to the template. Right next to the income tax number column is the standard industry classification code. To find this code, head back to Sage Payroll under the company details. Right in the middle of the page, you'll find the code. Return to the import template, enter the SIC code, copy it down for all employees, and then mark the column background in yellow to indicate completion. Next is the legally retired column. Let's check the validation rules. It says you can click on the drop-down arrow to make a selection, and if left blank, it will default to false. I'm selecting false and copying it down for all employees. Next, we move on to the RP5 start date. According to the rules, this date must be entered in the specified format. If it's left blank, it will default to the employee's date engaged or the beginning of the tax year. First, let's fix the date format by replacing forward slashes with hyphens. I'll do this on the working page within Excel. Once the formatting is correct, I'll copy the dates over to the template. Now we're on the working hours per day column. Let's start by checking the rules. They state that if hours per day are not specified, Sage will default to the cycle setting, which I believe is 8 hours per day. Additionally, the maximum value that can be entered is 24. Makes sense, of course. With that in mind, head back to the employee data. Using the search function in Excel makes this much easier. So I'm searching for hours. Fortunately, my raw data file does have hours per day, so I'll copy and paste it into the template. I noticed in my raw data that the working hours is listed as 192 hours per period, so I'm making a note of it. However, I couldn't find any working days per week in my data. According to the rules, if this field is left blank, the system will default to the cycle setting with a maximum of 7 days. As for the fixed salary, I'm going to leave it empty for now. I'll add the employees' salaries later when I import the financial figures, which I'll cover in the next video. Stay tuned to the Fun Accountants channel for that one. To start the import, look for the Data Take On heading. On my screen, I found it under the More menu. Go ahead and select it. Next, click on the Import Data heading. Here you'll see two types of imports: employee details and employer financials. Since this video is all about importing employee details, select Employee Details. You'll then be prompted to choose your information file. This is the import template we've been building throughout this video. Click Upload and then click the green Import File button at the bottom right corner. Fingers crossed, everything goes smoothly. Unfortunately, the file failed validation. But you know what? That's exactly a good thing, because now you'll get to learn from my mistakes and see exactly how to fix issues like this. So let's click OK and take a look at the errors Sage has flagged. One great feature of Sage is that it gives you a clear breakdown of the errors in your import template. First, it's obvious I've made a mistake with the cell phone numbers. I forgot to add a 0 at the front, and as a result, the numbers don't meet the required length of 15 digits. Next, there's an issue with the employment starting date. I've included employees who were only hired after this payroll cycle. Here's how the import works. You can't import all the employees you've hired throughout the year in one go. It has to be done cycle by cycle. For example, you import the March employee details first, then their financial figures for March. Once that is done, you roll forward to the next period, which is April, and import employees hired during that period. Makes sense, right? So I'll need to remove employees from my template who were employed in a later cycle. Lastly, it's no surprise that there's also an issue of the RP5 start date. Since we're in the March cycle, the RP5 start date for an employee hired in a later period can't fall within March. That's a clear rule. Now that I know what needs fixing, let's open the import template and get to work. I don't know how I missed fixing the cell phone numbers earlier, but here's the correct version. Copy it and paste it into the import file. This should resolve most of the errors. Next, I'll turn my attention to the starting dates. As expected, there are employees who were hired in later cycles. Specifically for April and May, I'll select those employees and remove them from the file. Now back to Sage, under Import Data, choose Employee Details. Select the file, press Upload, and then Import File. Sage takes its time validating the file. Once that's done, I'm greeted with the message, File imported successfully. Now we're down to the last two steps, verifying and processing the file. Press OK to proceed. On the screen, you'll see my import history, and right at the top is my latest upload. Under the Verify and Process heading, click on a checkbox with the pen and paper icon. The file data is displayed like an Excel spreadsheet. Now let's be honest, imports always involve a lot of data. You can scroll through it here to spot any glaring errors if you like. For example, you might have imported the wrong version of, or the wrong file, or the wrong cycle. However, at this stage, I trust the raw data provided and the validation process we followed. If you've worked carefully and paid attention throughout, there shouldn't be any issues. Click on Verify File to proceed. A warning message will pop up, asking you to acknowledge that the information imported and displayed on the screen is correct. Press OK to continue. The next message confirms that the file has been verified successfully. Press OK, but we are not done yet. The final step is to press Process File. You'll see a confirmation message asking if you're sure you want to proceed. It warns that once processed, the employees will be imported and any corrections or deletions will need to be made individually, one by one, in the payroll system. If everything looks good, press OK to continue. For larger employee databases, this step can take some time. And finally, I'm met with the message we've been waiting for. The file has been processed successfully. Press OK to finish. Let's take a look at the import details. In the top navigation menu under Employee, select Employee Details. I'll address the red exclamation marks, which indicate incomplete information for an employee. The first employee is missing a postal address. To fix this, I'll click Default from Physical Address to fill it in. Once I press Save, the red exclamation mark next to the employee's name disappears. I've realized that all these validation errors indicated by the red exclamation marks are due to the same issue, missing postal addresses. I'll fix them quickly. And there you have it. The employee details, or what I like to call the employee master file, is now fully imported. And we're ready to move on to the next part of the payroll import, the financial figures. That's covered in our next video. Stay tuned and see you soon.